Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Today I have one of my favorite players of all time, a kid that I was lucky enough to be captain with. I'm glad that we had you in '07 because I don't know who the hell else we could have made a captain because we were such a young team. But got my man James Laurinatis on the show today. James, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, man. Glad to be on with you, brother.
Yeah, and congrats on Shelly. You're expected number 3 now, correct?
That's right. Going from man to zone, so it'll be a fun adjustment for us, and we're very excited. 2020 has been a stressful year for I think a lot of people, and glad that he or she will be born in 2021 end of January, so they don't have to deal with it.
That'll be awesome, man. Yeah, it's been interesting just because I'm kind of new in the media. Well, I've been in the media world, but actually like owning a company that has to do sports media, and you are on a daily talk show, and the fact that like we haven't had sports for like months. I mean, how hard has it been for you guys to gin up stuff to talk about every day? Because it's like, normally you talk about, oh, this is what happened in the NBA last night, Major League Baseball, college football's around the corner. Like we went months and it was like a dry spell. Like how's that been, trying to keep an audience, to keep your sponsors and that type of deal?
It's been interesting. You have to start doing a lot of lists. You have to start, I think we went around the NFL. We did a kind of team by team breakdown on kind of favorite historic player, grading the uniforms, grading the stadium, kind of do you buy stock in them? Do you think they can win the Super Bowl? And then we went to, kind of the Big Ten, and we just actually wrapped up with Ohio State today. But tomorrow we'll do a kind of a overview of the Big Ten conference. But you have to get creative. It gets tough from time to time, and then you also, if you adapt we've adapted a couple shows, so there's only so much you can do. So off the bat it was Billions, which is on Showtime, and then once we got Billions stopped filming mid-season because of COVID. So once Billions is done, then now we're doing Yellowstone. So you try to eat up some segments that way. It's difficult, but thankfully, I think now you're thinking, okay, well, if we have, tonight we got pro baseball on. I was trying to figure out like, what do I watch? I had Jackets exhibition on, I had Indians on, and I have NBA restarting. So we'll kind of be drinking from a fire hose here, which is good, especially if the NFL and college football goes forward, and we'll have a lot of content. But it was challenging during those times.
Yeah, it's exciting. Everything is getting back to one. So talk a little bit about out of high school, you're at Wayzata, Minnesota. Talk a little bit about what other schools were in the running for you, and what ultimately led you to choosing Ohio State. I remember, I think Mike Cochran, one of our strength coaches on your official visit, your dad put him in a suplex, and he's like, that was the greatest thing ever. Like, put him like completely vertical, which is tough to do. I mean, unless it's like a guy like your dad, he's done it a million times and he benches 500 pounds. Like, he's done that a million times. They took a photo of it, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool to get that kid. I didn't know anything about you other than the fact that your dad was the animal, and I had his action figure when I was a kid. But tell me like a little bit about, who, was maybe second and third place, and what made you ultimately pick Ohio State?
Yeah, so I wasn't highly recruited at all. It was just 3 stars. So growing up, I was a huge Gophers fan growing up in Minnesota. So I automatically just assumed if I could play college football, I'd go there. My best friend was a year above me at Wayzata, and his name was Dominic Barber. His older brother was Merrick Barber, played running back at Minnesota, and then on with the Cowboys and the Bears. And Dom and I always, when we were in high school, we would go to every Gopher game on Saturdays, and then we would go to I remember driving down to Iowa with his family and watching Minnesota and Iowa play. And so I actually heard the IOWA chants before I ever heard OHIO. So when I got to Ohio Stadium and they're doing OHIO, I was like, oh, they do it just like Iowa.
They stole that from Iowa.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's cool. I honestly committed to Glen Mason at Minnesota. That was my only offer. Them and like North Dakota State, and North Dakota State before it was like cool to go to North Dakota State. And so this is back in 04, 05. So Yeah, man, I was like, okay, I guess I'll be a Gopher. I'm excited to play college football. Looking forward to it. And then out of nowhere, I get some traction. And Coach Tressel actually told this story to me. I saw him last summer, and he said that one of my teachers, who is from Ohio, actually wrote a letter to Ohio State saying, "Hey, we have a linebacker who I need to be a Buckeye."
Oh my
And
God.
Tressel goes, Jim goes, I get the letter and it says Minnesota, and I'm like, who do we have that recruits Minnesota? I'm like, he goes, I don't think we have anyone. He's like, but his brother, he's like, hey,
Yeah, Doc.
yeah, hey Doc. He goes, you coached at Minnesota at D3 college, I believe at Hamlin. He's like, yeah. He goes, you go ahead and look into this, and they got my film, and like, okay, we're interested, and they came and watched, and kind of the rest is history. But once I took a visit here, I kind of knew it was that. And then once Ohio State offered, which I don't consider these real offers, right? But once Ohio State offers, it's the same thing now. OSU offers, or a big school, and the next thing you know, if some of these other schools didn't offer, all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, hold on. What who's this kid? I think that happened with a guy like Olave, who's a 3-star, right? Brian Day's out there to check out somebody else who offer Olave. All of a sudden, not every school that's a D1 school is offering him. Like, hold on, what's Ohio State seeing him? Let's throw an offer his way. So there were other schools that came around, but I don't really consider them legitimate because I didn't even get all that, mass copy paste, recruiting info from some of these schools that would. Next thing you know, I got a scholarship offer in the mail. I'm like, I didn't even talk to anybody. That's not real. I always say I had 2 offers, or 3 legit offers. It was Ohio State, Minnesota, North Dakota State.
You could have been the next Jonathan Taves if you had gone Minnesota State, man. You could have been playing defenseman for him. But it's amazing how stuff like that works out. A teacher believed in you and sent a letter. And Jim Tressel might be the only coach in Division 1A that would actually open a random letter from Minnesota. Because that's what Tress is. Like, Urban's not opening that letter. He's like, yeah, trash. Put that on the fireplace to start the fire up. But it is funny you mentioned how people – like, because when I worked for Urban, he's like, if Bobby Petrino was at Arkansas and offered running back, he would offer that running back because he trusted his evals. Like if Nick Saban offered a defensive back, he would offer that defensive back. Like, I mean, it would be like, they gloss over the film, but it's like, yeah, if Saban's after him, like we're after him. Like, I mean, it's kind of like, and that's kind of the funny thing about recruiting is like you're the same exact kid you were before Ohio State offered you, but it's like everybody's kind of scared. Like they're scared to offer a kid from Minnesota, like not exactly a football hotbed. And all of a sudden, but then Ohio State shows up and offers, and so I'm sure like Michigan's calling, Iowa, maybe SEC and ACC schools, like all because of that one offer. It's like it like opens the door for you. I mean, I did the same thing when I got my Ohio State offer. It was like magically, it was like, oh, it's okay to offer this guy now. And it's funny how that works because you're like, I'm the same guy I was before, but you guys didn't have the balls to do it. It's
no doubt.
It's just funny. So, well, fast forward to 05. You guys show up. We're pretty good. Obviously we played. I always tell people like the 05 team was the best team I played on, but we played a really hard schedule. Like we played Texas who won the national championship. Penn State was really good that year. I tore my knee up like in the second quarter of that game, which sucked, and I still regret that. So we lost 17-10. Our defense was out of this world good that night. We just couldn't score. But we'll fast forward to Michigan. I mean, obviously, I'm going to go with this. Jake Long breaks Bobby in 2. Breaks his leg, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, like I'm like next. Like, I mean, how's that moment when all of a sudden, you see Jake, put Bobby on the ground. Because when you're a backup, like you got to stay ready. Like I always hated being a backup because you have to always stay loose and stretch. And I'm sure you're on like teams, you're on special teams, but when you go out and play all the plays on defense, that's like 70 plays. Like on special teams, you might be playing like 20 or 25. But tell me a little bit about how you see Bobby go down. And you're like, oh God, I'm in, and this is a real one. Like that was not an easy game. They were scoring on us, and we needed a pretty good comeback to come back and win that one. But tell me a little bit about that. Your first big action.
Yeah, so it starts all the way back in week 1. We played Miami, Ohio. I was third string Sam behind Marcus Freeman. I wasn't even on special teams at this point. I was like a backup teamer. And so Marcus runs down on first opening kickoff, tears his meniscus.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up, okay, so now you're a backup. Now you're playing special teams. And Luke's kind of like, hey, do you want to burn your shirt here? Do you want to get some real footage? And like, you're in Ohio Stadium. It's week 1, of course. Like, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
We can have this 4-game red shirt now.
Yeah.
And Marcus ends up getting staph infection and a meniscus tears. It's not the end of the world.
Like a week.
Yeah. But he gets staph and has to wear one of those, kind of those fanny pack pouches that kind of pump antibiotics and stuff in it.
Yeah.
And because of that, I become backup. And Marcus ends up sitting the season out. And so now Luke, I think, Luke was always really good at this. He wanted every single guy in that room to realize you're 1 or 2 plays away, which is reality. It sounds like coach speak, but it's so true.
It's so true, man.
Such a violent game like football, anything. So, opening kickoff, I'll never forget it. I run down the field. There's this backup tight end. That's their center on kick return. He tangles feet with the guard. So he kind of falls over as I make contact, but I'm hyped up. We're in Ann Arbor. I'm so in my mind, I just ran this cat over. In reality, he probably tripped. But I'm fired up. I get to the sideline. Malcolm Jenkins wasn't playing that game. He had a PCL issue, but he's on the sideline dressed. So I'm over there with Malk, I'm, hyped up, talking trash. And then all of a sudden I just hear Luke yelling for my name. And I'm like, what? What do you need? What could I possibly have done wrong? It was a touchback. I thought he was going to get after me. And it was all of a sudden I look on the field and Bobby's on the ground. He's up, trying to limp off, And funny stories there about how, our trainers say that Bobby goes to the sidelines and said, I broke my femur. And, Bob's like, there's no way I said femur. I know what I broke, but it's just this fun. It was one of those moments where it happened so fast. I didn't even have time to even think. My first thought on the field was, as I'm looking in the huddle at Schlegs and AJ and Dante Whitner and these guys, is just do your job. You don't got to be a hero out here. You're not going to make any play that these guys aren't going to make already. So you're supposed to have contained, damn it, have contained. Let these guys make the plays. There's nothing special you're going to do to outshine anybody. This is not the time for that. And it was just kind of don't look like an idiot. And so thankfully for me, it really only ended up being, I think, 20-something plays. It's funny how, the further you get away from the game, people's, legend in their mind, grows. I'll get all the time, man, I remember that first game against Michigan, you had, 12 tackles. I'm like, bro, I played, 12 plays.
We were nickel the whole game, yeah.
Yeah, we played a ton of nickel. I was I think I was, maybe had 1 assist. But ultimately it was just the thing that I was proud of the most, and this, mental errors will get you benched so fast, and I didn't have mental errors. There are physically things that was just, some were bad, some were okay, some were good, but I didn't have any mental errors. I wasn't misaligned. The moment wasn't too big as far as that point. Now, there were some blocks, you go hit Jake Long for the first. That's a little different than going, That's a different cat to go against. So it's just, there were certain things that kind of happened where I was all right, tackling Mike Hart, people forget because we've dominated for so long over them, but Michigan had cats, man. When we played them in 05 and 06, they had dudes. So I mean,
I'm telling you, I tell people that because they're because in 06 we beat them and they're number 2 in the country, and they're well, you'd never seen speed like the Florida guys. I'm dude, we went against Lamar Woodley and Branch.
Yeah.
Lamar Woodley was better than either of the Florida guys, and it wasn't even close. And he was better in the pros. And I was Lamar Woodley was Dwight Freeney his first few years at Michigan, and it's that guy, he was real, and so was Branch. I mean, Branch just retired last year, played 15 years.
Yeah.
I mean, David Harris, that defense had dudes everywhere. They had a good court, Leon Hall. They had all these first round guys everywhere, and it was just I know that in 05 their record wasn't great, but they beat that Penn State team that beat us, and it's their skill guys were Manningham, who was as good as anybody. Chad Henne is still in the league. Jake was the number 1 pick. And I'm you know, like they had like dudes like, I mean, it went a little dry after Lloyd left, and it was like in '08 and like 9-10, it was just like Rich Rod really couldn't get it going recruiting wise. But I was like, we were going against like real dudes like every week. I mean,
yeah,
my freshman year, they had Braylon, who was like the 3rd overall pick, and like he dusted us, and we beat him, but it was still like, you know, we dominated, but it was a lot of those games were treacherous. Like that '05 game was treacherous. It was like we were down, you know, like 10 or 9 or something with like 7 minutes to go in the game, like at Ann Arbor. Like most teams don't come back from that. Like it's
the play,
you know,
Troy made where he stepped up and then bounced out, and it may have been Harris coming up the gut. I don't know who it was coming up the gut, but he stepped out, and then he throws it downfield to Gon. Like there are plays in that game,
dude.
That was my first experience. What on earth is this game?
Oh my God. Did he made a play, and you know what's funny is I have the coaches film from '05 and '06 every game, all 22 cut up offense and defense. So that's going to be something that I'm going to eventually break down, because he makes a play in Michigan that nobody even remembers except for like me, where we're up there in '05 and it's like 3rd and like 9, and like, you know, he's in the pocket, nobody's open, he scrambles out to the left and like sees the yard marker, and Woodley is coming right at him. Like, I mean, he has the angle. Woodley was fast, getting ready to kill Troy. Troy like stops, like he's like Roadrunner, and like Woodley was like Wile E. Coyote and went flying off into the sideline, and Troy takes like 2 steps past the first down marker and like stops the clock. And I was like, does anybody realize like how good that was? Like, you know, people, you know, they can say whatever they want about Troy. I was like, they always have any gold chances of Troy. It's like I can wear my little charms and stuff, but Troy Smith was an absolute monster against those guys. And it's just like, holy cow. So, you know, fast forward to '06, and it's a little different. You know, you're not the old guy, but you're like the experienced guy, because you look around and all of a sudden there's no AJ, no Schlegs, no Dante, no Kudla. Like, I mean, a lot of these guys that were really, really good seniors. Talk a little bit about becoming a leader in '06. So I remember going against you guys in spring, and I was like, you know, I thought you guys had potential, but I was like, you know, it's not like going against Schlegs and AJ, and because you guys were so young. You guys were 19 years old. Like, I mean, Schlegel was like 27 years old his senior year, and it's like he every time he ran Alaska, man, it was like an instant concussion for me. I mean, he would put his head and his cowboy collar right into my neck, and I'd be like, God damn it, Schlegs, can you like at least not try to kill me every time you're on Alaska or Bama? And I still give him crap about that. But talk a little bit about like '06 being like the veteran, even though you're the young guy.
You know, so I made the switch from Sam to Mike that spring. Felt really comfortable in it, and then a lot of pressure because we knew we had an offense. We knew we were going to score. It was just, you're right. We replaced Anthony, AJ, and Bob, and then I mean, you mentioned Kudla, you mentioned Dante Whitner,
Ashton, Nate.
Ashton. Yep. So we had so many guys that we lost, and we played Northern Illinois week 1, and we beat them easily. But if you remember, like Garrett Wolf ran for like 200 on us. Garrett Wolf ended up playing for the. I remember like reading Dispatch headlines after, and it was like, because we were about to play Texas after, and so like, hold on, our defense, like we looked shaky. We were I mean, I remember Luke getting after us. We were not good. Like. And just the sense of urgency wasn't good, and we didn't really grow up and really figure out kind of like, oh, we got it until we played Texas. And when we went down there and beat them, that's when it was kind of like, all right, I think we got something here. And to be honest, it was just I liked the way – I always liked and admired the way AJ tried to lead, where it was very quiet. He was going to be there consistent, 6 a.m. workouts. He was going to work his tail off. He was going to practice hard, run to the ball. Didn't have to be very loud. And I kind of appreciated that about AJ. And so, and I know Luke loved that because Luke wasn't big on the whole rah. He just wanted you to go out there. So for me, it was like, okay, for one, it was kind of like I need to prove that I can actually play and own this position. If you remember, we had Larry Grant transfer in. When Larry came in, Larry he was basically won the Heisman of JUCO. Like he was player of the year in JUCO when he came over. So he was really good. I remember Luke telling me and him that we were going to rotate at Mike against Texas, and thankfully I got lucky and made a play early in that game.
You got that pick, yeah.
So there was no rotating. But that was the game that for me just gave me the confidence of like, okay, you can play college football at this stage. And it's time to continue to prove to your teammates that you can be consistent. You can be a guy that they can rely on. Coach doesn't have to worry about you when he goes to the middle. And then after that, then I think that's how you build leadership. I don't think you can run your mouth until you display your ability and you're able to actually be dependable. No one wants to listen to somebody who isn't accountable or isn't, lined up right or whatever. So it was that was a kind of early on. That was a big step in 2006 was beating Texas and then going on that trajectory to where, I think after that we kind of knew we're going to the Natty. We just got to get
through Michigan.
We got to get through Michigan. Yep.
Yeah, it's funny because I always say the easiest way to be a leader is be really productive and really consistent. Because otherwise, we were both captains in 2007, but it's like if I'm out there playing like garbage and giving up sacks or whatever, it's like no one's gonna want to listen to me. It's like you got to be the kind of the standard bearer. Like you got to be the guy that everybody looks to when stuff's bad. You got to be the guy that creates a turnover, or creates the big hit, or creates momentum. And I remember in 2006 camp, because everyone's like our offense was vaunted, but you guys beat us in the jersey scrimmage, which gave me confidence in you guys. And I get it, the Northern Illinois game, they were they had Doug Free and they had Garrett Wolf and whatever, but that was a lot of guys' first real game action. So I was like, we scored 28 points in the first quarter of that game because we had Ted and we had Ted had 2 bombs, and it's just you knew we were going to score. And we had to go to Iowa, and our schedule was just so much easier than it was the year before. I mean, Michigan was better, but everybody else either there wasn't a Texas week 2 thing, or a Vince Young Texas. Getting Colt McCoy is his second career start. That was awesome. Because I'm just saying, when Vince Young beat us, I was like, I hope they win the Natty so that he goes pro. Because I do not want to go down to Austin and play in 2006.
People don't realize, you're right about that 2005 team. That was the most talented team by far. And it was – you lost to Vince Young where it was a last fourth quarter drive, and I think we're still kicking ourselves for missed opportunities in that game.
We sucked on offense. Dude, we kicked 5 field goals. That's the one that haunts me because I'm we had 5 field goals. If we would have scored 1 touchdown, we went. I can say because I played offense. You're not going to say because you're a defensive guy and you're a nice guy, but we sucked. We didn't convert our opportunities. We had the best O-line ever. We had Nick, who was unbelievable. We had Robbie Sims. Our receivers were Santonio, Ted, and Gonzo. Santonio is the most underrated player in school history. He was so damn good. I loved him. I loved Pitt. I was that game kills me because you guys were going crazy, balling out of control on defense. AJ played the game of his life, and then we go to Penn State and lose, and you guys give up 160 yards the whole game, and we lose, and it's just that was crushing because that was that's a team. It was Ohio State's team last year. They have to win the Natty with that team last year. When you have Chase and Okuda, Justin Fields, you don't get that crop of talent in the same place at the same time very often, and it's you got to capitalize. You got to cash those in, man, because those don't come around real often.
No, the team last year, to me, I felt worse for them than the 15 team. Everyone likes to talk about 15 because they wonder the Michigan State upset, right? So it's how many times Zeke touched the ball. It's all those things. But I never felt comfortable in that squad with the Cardale JT kind of – just never felt like a well-oiled machine at all. Every game kind of felt lethargic and you were waiting for an explosion. Where last year it was so impressive how they operated. And then to lose the way you did with some bad calls, but also, as you know, being a player, of course that sucks, but we missed opportunities, right? You had dropped. You had too many red zone trips that resulted in field goals that kept it close.
JK getting hurt.
Yeah, and if you don't,
I mean, that was like us losing Ted. Like we lost Ted against Florida, and people were like, "Well, that wasn't a 28-point guy." But I'm like, "Well, he's the only guy still playing in the NFL from that game. It's pretty good."
he was
You
the
know what I
game
mean?
plan. Know that he was. I mean, he was the game plan, and he was the
Dude, I
guy.
mean, I tell people go watch the '06 Michigan game and tell me Ted wasn't a good receiver. I mean, he was
Oh yeah,
an absolute monster in the '06 Michigan game. I mean, he was a problem, and it's like, it's like if. Yeah, I tell people like with Coach Meyer, if he loses Tebow in '08, like the first play of the Oklahoma game, he's going against like Sam Bradford, and
oh yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you might win, but you're gonna put John Brantley out there, who's not Tim Tebow, and magically you might not be quite as good on offense, believe it or not. And that's not me being anything other than true. I mean, he literally was our best player, he's our highest drafted player. He's still in the league. I mean, he's. It's whatever. But so you transition, talk a little bit about, '07, I needed you to be a captain more than anything in the world. And I told Trust that. I was like, look, James has to be a captain. I know you don't do a lot of two-time captains around here as a third-year junior, but, like, we ain't got nobody else. Like, I looked around and, like, everybody kind of cleared out, that I kind of played with as I got older. And talk about being a third-year junior captain. Because I know that, anymore at Ohio State, we elect like 15 captains every year, which is insane. But like back in the day, we only have 3. So it was like it actually meant something. So talk a little bit about being elected a captain as a third-year junior with Tress. I mean, you were the first guy that ever got that honor full time. Talk about that.
Yeah, it was one of the greatest honors of my career because as you're voted by your peers and your coaching staff to kind of be captain, you understand the weight in that, right? It's more than just on the field, it's off the field. It goes to the leadership role. Now, there are leaders that don't have the captain, or don't have the C, but if you're going to have to be a captain, you can't be the guy telling guys to live right and you're not living right. Or you can't be the guy to say, cussing people out for getting in your gap or don't let us down. And the next thing you know, you give up 3 plays that game because you were misaligned, right? So there's an added pressure to it. And then you kind of look at, oh my gosh, who's been the captains here at Ohio State? And to be it as a junior was humbling, it was kind of like an responsibility, but I welcomed it. And I was super happy to have it. But it was just kind of like when you kind of sit back that year and you take a deep breath and you go, oh, okay, look who else. I mean, you look at the captain's breakfast in the list and like, all right, this is pretty sweet. So it was a huge responsibility, but one that I cherished and absolutely loved.
Yeah, it's funny because Coach Meyer changed it to a dinner. So you go to like the dinner at the golf course instead of the breakfast, which I personally love because like, the morning of the game, like you're already kind of in like Full Metal Jacket mode. You're not really dying to hear about how they did it in 1982, when they're ready to play Indiana. Like, I mean, like, because I always tell those guys, like, cause I love sitting with like Wyatt and Thayer and Josh Myers and say, I love watching you guys play. You guys play great. And I tell like Brandon Bowen, who I love to death, and Nick Petit for all these kids. I'm like, you should be thankful you have a guy like Wyatt and Jonah Jackson as your guards. Because when you have like a great guard, it's like you having like a great nose guard and a great D tackle in front of you. Like it makes your life so much better than having some guy that just gets launched into your lap on a double team. And you're just like, how am I supposed to make the play if you can't hold anybody up? Like, and I like going to that because, for one, I'm the only guy from our era that goes to these. Like, there's nobody in the Trustwell era that goes to these, and I just go because I don't really care and I like seeing my guys. But, it is cool. I mean, I like to go back and just kind of talk to the kids. It's not because I want to tell them about what I did or what we did or when we played Michigan. Like I always talk about like stuff I wish I knew when I was playing. Like you wish you could go back sometimes and go back to you when you were 20 and say, hey, maybe do more yoga and less benching 600 pounds or do work on your flexibility more. Or I mean, everybody has stuff that you're like do this a little bit better, study this. The game's going to go more towards the passing game, so work on your drops instead of your whatever. I don't know. Like, there's always little things you can pass on. It was interesting. And so from '07, talk about your decision to come back because it didn't really shock me, but it kind of shocked me because you could have been a top 10 pick after 07, but you decided to come back. Frankly, you guys were loaded. You guys had like 20 starters back. It was like me, Larry Grant, and Vernon were like the only guys that were gone.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the decision to come back in 08 with Malcolm and those guys and try to go for the run.
I think people forget where Todd – I mean, when we beat in 07 – remember when we beat Penn State at Penn State, like the conversations around Todd Beckman were legitimate, right? I mean,
Heisman.
Yeah.
He was the dark horse for the Heisman on SportsCenter. That was like the voodoo witch doll that they put right in a needle right in his head. Because it was like after that, it was like he was never the same. But it was like, I remember watching that. I was like, oh my God, Todd might go to the Heisman. I'm like,
I know. So
yeah.
I think just after that year, and to be honest, we had chances against LSU. We had chances that year, and we were just I was so fired up. Just when you lose 2 national titles in a row, and Florida, you felt like, damn it, if we had Ted, you know what, we didn't do a good enough job on defense stopping them. They're still running the same damn bubble play, and we can't stop them.
Well, dude, and I mean, we ran like 14 plays the whole game on offense. We were like,
yeah,
it's just like that was like one of those ones where it's like Murphy's Law. It's like when Ohio State lost to Clemson like 31-0. It's like sometimes that just happens. Like, it's not your night. Like it happens to Bill Belichick. It happens to every coach, every team. If you're in it long enough, something stupid like that will happen to you in the game of football.
But LSU pisses me off. Like that game, you had plays there that were for the taking. Anyway, the 2 in a row really hurt. And so you're thinking in a way, hey, we'll have Todd coming back. We got a roster around us. We'll have opportunities, big games. I wanted to play out in the Coliseum against USC. I thought, that'd be a very cool game to be a part of. Did not know that Beanie would, get hurt the week before.
Yeah, it was like tag in part 2.
Yeah, so it hurt us, but it was a tough decision. It really was, but it was just at the end of the day, I kept hearing from people over and over, and I'm pretty good too. It's like you hear people all the time say, "Man, like enjoy your college years. Like you'll get like I would do anything to go back to college." And I took that to heart when I heard it, and I knew how special Ohio State was. Back then, it was different. Like Ohio State, and this isn't a bad thing, but Ohio State has become it's NFL youth, right? And that's part of the urban culture. It's 3 and done. Like that's 3 into the league, and to be honest, that's why recruiting has skyrocketed, I believe, because if you're a random kid in Florida who knows of Ohio State, doesn't really pay attention, you know what they'll pay attention to? Zeke's money, Michael Thomas's money, Joey Bosa's money. And where'd those cats go to school? Ohio State. Oh, well, if I want to be that, I guess I need to go there. But when we played, it was more like, and it still is this way too. Like if you want to be a 4-year guy, being a big man on campus at Ohio State is one of the best things you can do because it's one of the most unique spots in the world where you can network that to when you're done, come back and be taken care of by whoever. It's a big reason why I'm able to do the job that I do now, is because of that. So, and that's not just 97.1 The Fan. That's Big Ten Network. That's Fox. It's a place that carries a lot of weight, and the brotherhood is real. And I had some brothers that we wanted to try to win it, and chase it. And when you lose 2 in a row, you really think. If I really didn't think that we had a good chance to get there a 3rd year in a row, I wouldn't have come back. But it was right there. So you're like, hell, I get to experience all the same stuff I've experienced the last 2 years for 1 more year. Let's do it. I'm not worried about the NFL. Like we'll worry about that when we get there. But it was like, let's go. Let's chase it again. And lost 3 times a year. Hell, we lost to USC, bad out in LA. Lost to Penn State at home. And then lost to Texas in the bowl game on the last drive of the game, which is an awful way to end your career. But just there's still so many good memories of that year. And it really was a tough year because it was the Todd Beckman Terrell Pryor thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, when you get to lace up that scarlet and gray, man, there's nothing like it. So I wish it was different, of course, but an underachieving year, which is probably one of the hardest things to go through, because it was a transition of, you knew the future was Terrell. You just didn't want to be part of that year of the growing pains. And I felt like we were part of that year of growing. You know what I mean? Like, true freshman quarterback, and now that's how you're senior. But after USC, it was kind of like, okay, well, it's obvious we're not going to a national championship after losing that way early on, after losing 2 big national championship games 2 years in a row. So it was time to kind of prep for the future. So regardless, it was a tough year. Todd's a captain, and he comes out to the coin toss with us, right? And we're doing all that, and he's not even starting down the stretch. It's a different year.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how tough that was on Todd, just because, like, I was like with you at the coin toss the year before, and it was just like, I couldn't imagine like going out to that and then putting my helmet like, under the bench and signaling. Like that would, dude, I mean,
bro, I don't know how he did it.
I know he's an unbelievable kid, because me, I was like psychotic. It's like, I had to like whip my guys into shape like every single day, because in 07 it was like the flip of 06, because 07 we were number 1 in the nation in total defense. We had you, Vernon, Malcolm. We were just loaded. And then on offense, a lot of new guys. It was basically the Beanie Show. Then Hartline and Robo were developing as our receivers. But we lost Ted early, we lost Gonzo early, we lost Pittman early. So I felt the pressure, probably the pressure that you felt in 06, where it's like, we got to hold up our end of the bargain and try to score. If we score 14, we're probably going to win because our defense is so good. And some games like Akron, I'll never forget, we got off halftime, it's like 3-2, and we're getting booed because we're that bad on offense. It was miserable, but it was just like, I was a raging psychopath in 07, because I was like, we have to up the standard and score points for this defense. This defense is too good to waste on, us sucking, essentially. And it's like, that's tough, because you guys were kind of in the boat the year before where it's like we had a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback and 2 first-round receivers, and you guys we got to stop them a little bit so we can win. The next year, I was like, we got to score 14, to just try to, 20. Tress would always say 24 or whatever, but I'm like, with this defense, we could score 14, we'll probably win. We had to go to Washington and play Walker.
Yeah.
We had to go to Penn State, which was kind of like people that haven't been to Penn State don't realize how hard it is to win at Penn State. And we stomped them pretty good out there. Which that was very gratifying. That was one of those deals. But so talk a little bit about, you get drafted, you go to the Rams, you have a great career. I'll gloss over this for the sake of time. And, you finish up. What made you want to get into broadcasting? There's a lot of guys that it's like a natural transition to either get into coaching or broadcasting. You picked broadcasting. And frankly, and I've told you this even before I was, begging to get you on our podcast, you're really good at it, because I can tell you put in the work. 'Cause I've seen so many guys that are god awful at it. I can't listen to them. I have to mute them. But tell me what inspired you to chase the broadcasting color commentary deal.
I've always been interested in it, even back to high school. I used to play Madden sometimes and actually voice over some of the stuff. I don't know why. I've always just been a nut. I've been a nut about football forever. And to be honest, I really thought I was going to get into coaching first. I think it's just the way the career went. It's unique. If the Rams had stayed in St. Louis and I was able to finish my career there, I would have tried to get into either the front office, scouting, something with the Rams. I probably stayed in St. Louis, but they didn't. They went to LA and they fired me before they did. And so that meant, new team. It's New Orleans. I thought I was going to be there for 3 years. That's why we bought the place in Nashville, lived in Nashville in the off season, because I didn't want to live in New Orleans year round. And after that first year in New Orleans, when I started to get dinged up, you just kind of know, for one, the training isn't fun anymore. I was in a new organization, so you're proving yourself again. And I got named captain the first year there. So I felt like, okay, I'm proving myself. And then my body started to break down, and it wasn't fun to try to get that back. And then you're watching film and you're like, I don't even recognize the guy. Like, part of your brain as a competitor says, okay, take this note. I got to do this better next time. All right. And I'll make that play. Then like, there's a part of you is like, I'm not sure I can make that play anymore. Yeah. You know, that's the hard thing to realize. And so I really got to a point where I was put on IR, and the decision was really made for me. I asked my release. I said, I just want to go back to Nashville. I want this to be done. I did not like New Orleans. I think it's a great place to visit for 48 hours. Just wasn't my cup of tea. Really great teammates, really good dudes in the locker room. I really appreciate them. But it was at a point where I wanted to go back to Nashville and get out of there. And I really thought about coaching. I called Fick, thought about joining Fickle's staff, and ultimately pulled out when we got pregnant with our second. And just said, timing isn't really right to move to Cincinnati to see if I wanted to, do coaching. So then I just said, okay, I'm going to go to broadcast boot camp that NFL puts on, and basically what it is, it's a all-encompassing media thing, and they'll bring in all of the league partners. They bring in the Big Ten Network because the Big Ten Network is owned by Fox. So I went there just thinking, try to get in front of NFL, whether it's NBC, ABC, ESPN, all these people, and just see if someone notices you, then cool. Then maybe you'll start something. And Big Ten Network was the ones that was like, hey, we'd love to, hire you and have you do a studio show. So I started doing that, Nashville to Chicago every week. And then I really wanted to do games though. And so something opened that year where I did like a 3-man booth with Matt Millen. I think it was like UNLV, Ohio State. And that's my first rolling, and jumped in the booth there. And I was like, oh, I loved it, and had really good feedback. And was thankful that they gave me that opportunity. And then they put me on Brandon Gaudin's crew. So me and Brandon Gaudin, Brandon's our play-by-play, is the voice of Madden, play-by-play of Madden. And so him and I are the second crew on Big Ten Network, our first full year last year together. Fox used me last year, maybe it was 2 years ago again. I get confused. No, so I filled in for Millen half of 1 year because Matt Millen had a heart issue.
Heart deal, yeah.
Yep, and then after that, then I joined with Brandon. But I would have coached if it was in Columbus. It's still something that there's a lot of knowledge that I feel like I have to give back, and I love impacting young men. But the timing has never really been right with the family. And now it's kind of like I love Columbus so much, I don't want to move to make that a reality. So it has to be a unique situation. It's tough. As you know, like the coaching profession is a lot of hours. So to me, it ultimately came down to, do you want to be dad and invest in your 2 daughters, or do you want to be a coach and invest in a ton of young men, but not maybe invest as much, at home? And to me, I ultimately chose home. And what I try to do with football and calling games, though, is I try to just build great relationships. I try never to roast anybody. I just said, you know what? I want to highlight the positive always. And one of my favorites to listen to and favorites to be covered by was Charles Davis. I just feel like he's always optimistic.
The best.
And he's always very, level headed. And even when he criticizes, it's nothing personal. It's just the football part of the play. And you don't feel bad when he does, because a lot of times when you hear it back, you're like, he's spot on. And you feel comfortable talking to him. And that's what I try to do. And it's fun. It's fun to sit in a coaches meeting with Scott Frost and just shoot the crap around and, talk ball. Or it's fun to see Pat Fitzgerald and reminisce about, playing days. And it's a good thing. And I love covering the Big Ten. We'll see what happens with this year. Is kind of going to be a weird year if we have football, to kind of see how this goes. That the trajectory feels strong, and just try to, like you said, I pride myself no matter what I do on just trying to be prepared. And that's whether that's tomorrow morning doing 97 on the Fan. I don't want to ever have somebody listen and be like, that guy doesn't. He's going through the motions, or he doesn't know. You know what I mean? Like, And you can very easily go through the motions if you want to. But I don't want to be that guy. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it all the way. So it's a lot of work. You know, when you're studying rosters like Rutgers and Buffalo, it's a lot of work to kind of jump into programs you don't know much about. But then once you do it, what's fun is you'll start to watch games on Sunday and you'll hear a name and be like, oh, shoot, that cat played at Buffalo. He was pretty good. He had a good day against Rutgers, you know, and like things will come into your mind and because you study these guys. And it's fun. It is fun. And the travel can be tough a little bit at times, but it's funny. Like it's like sprinting on a treadmill at 12, you know, or 13 or 14 for the fall. And then you get to the off season and it's like walking at 2. You know?
Exactly. It's like I said, I mentioned to you before we went on, but like I remember I stay up because I'm a night owl and I love college football and I love Pac-12 after dark. And I remember when Michigan State was playing Arizona State and you were doing the game. It was like an 11 o'clock kickoff East Coast, which is really late for a Pac-12 game. And they had N'Keal Harry and I had him in my fantasy team. And I was like, James. And I was like, listening to you. And I was like, dude, you're great. Like, I mean, I don't say that just because I know you're a captain, because if you sucked, I just wouldn't say anything. But, like, you actually, like, you tell the guys.
I know that's the case.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's just, you can tell. And it's like, I like to compliment you because, you know, we've seen a lot of guys that get into it. And like you said, they just mail it in. They're not pros. They don't put in the work to really know what they're talking about. And I was blessed, frankly, because I was like you. Like, I didn't know if I wanted to coach, if I wanted to get into business. So I was a grad assistant with Tress and then Luke and then Urban. And that last year with Urban, I learned more football than I could ever dream of learning. And, you know, when I do analysis on like wall-to-wall sports or on Buckeye Football Fever or whatever, you know, it's like when you talk about sitting in the coaching meetings with Scott Frost, you could sit and listen to Scott Frost talk about his offense, and you could probably learn 50 things you never considered or knew because he's so innovative. And you're like, holy cow, like you run a bubble screen and then the tight end fakes the block and then he comes loose, because they did that against us. Like when Nebraska came to the shoe 2 years ago, like they didn't have the dudes that we had, but they were running stuff, and I was like, holy cow. Like I was like, that is like awesome. Like some of their scheme stuff, I was like, because, you know, I always pretend I'm you. I'm like, that is so hard to defend. Like a bubble with a fake block, and the tight end came scot-free, and I was like, I don't know how you defend that. Like it's like impossible, you know. And putting defenders in those tough in-between spots, especially when you have high-level athletes like the Gators did. Like it's one thing if like you have, you know, some stiff from Nebraska doing it. It's another thing when you have Percy Harvin doing it. It's like, you know, and then it's Aaron Hernandez who's faking the block and coming off. It's like you have two like first-round type guys that are elite athletes. That's when it gets real scary, because like if you make a misstep, it can get ugly. But, you know, I love listening to you talk. I love you mentioned Charles Davis, because you know my affinity for Charles Davis. I tweet him. He's kind of up and coming when we played, and now he's like on Madden, and he's like, you know, one of the top color guys in the game. And I love his style. Is the perfect thing to emulate, because like you said, he's like, you know, he's kind of like a national version of Jim Lachey. Like Jim Lachey, I could give up a sack and get the quarterback decapitated. And Jim Lachey's like, yeah, you know, Kirk's got to get a little bit lower there and maybe not get the quarterback murdered quite as much as he did. And, you know, it's like, I mean, he'd never just take a total dump on you like he could. But, you know, I think that's the best policy, because, like, you never know, you know, who you're going to cover next. Like, you don't want to really come off the top rope on a coach or a player, because, you know, if it's bad, they're probably going to hear about it, or their wife will hear it, or you'll be in that next staff meeting like, do you know what my wife said you said about me when we lost like 77-0 to Ohio State or whatever? And you're like, I don't know what I say. It's like, but it's a good style. But I'll wrap this in the sake of time. So plug your radio show. You're on 10 to 1 every day.
9 to noon, because, you know, don't mess up. Don't mess with Bobby. All right, Bobby's noon to 3, so you can't mess with Bobby's time. Bob and AR, we're 9 to noon on 97.1 The Fan, and Bishop and Laurinatis, and finally have some sports to talk about again, which is nice.
Yeah. How does Bishop get the A side and you get the B side? Aren't you like Money Mayweather? Shouldn't you be the A side? I mean, Laurinatis versus Bishop. Like, I mean, I think a Bishop. I think of like Bryce Bishop or a Bishop in chess. Like, there's only one Laurinatis. Well, I guess there's two with your dad, but
Bishop and kind of better than Laurinatis and Bishop. Like Carpenter and Rothman works better than Rothman and Carpenter, but I don't know. I think the short to long name might just be it. It might be that simple.
Yeah, I love it, man. Well, you know, I know you have Tony Girdman on. We also have Bill Green. We have 4 great recruiting guys: Mark Yevler, Mick Walker, Alex Gleitman. Anything you guys need from the Scoop, we're at your disposal. You know, you guys have Gerd on all the time. Gerd's great. You know, we try to help you guys out as much as you can. So you guys are a friend of the Scoop. You know, Rothman's had a bunch of our guys on, so we are at your disposal, my friend. And keep being great, man. Seriously, you really are a superstar in the color commentary game. I'm glad everything's going good with you and Shelly and baby number 3. Yeah, I hope that everything goes great with football. In my opinion, I think the big boys are going to play. Like, I think Rutgers and Michigan State are so bad, and they have new coaching staffs. They're kind of like the guy that wants to get out of conditioning drills and stuff. It's like they don't, you know, they're trying to get like tonsillitis, or it's like they're, you know, there's like always a guy that has like a grandma who dies in the middle of 2 days, and they got to go to like their 4th grandma's funeral. You know, they got to do the Lou Williams and say, oh yeah, my great granddad died in Atlanta, and it just happens the funeral's right across from Magic City. You know, it's like that's what Rutgers and Michigan State is like. They're just going to be so bad, and they didn't get spring ball, they didn't get summer ball, so they're just, yeah, you know, we all have COVID, we got to shut it down. Like, but Ohio State is like a steam, you know, like the SEC, like they're not going to stop. Like the big boys are not going to stop. Like this is my mentality on this whole thing. But I'm excited for football. Excited to see, you know, when you figure out like what your schedule is like. 'Cause I'm sure every week you get assigned to a different game. You know, we'll plug that, make sure our people are tuning in and watching you, and you know, loving you up, my man. But I appreciate you. You're a friend of the Scoop. You're a great player, great husband, and let's do it again soon, brother.
Absolutely, brother. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Always, my friend. Thank you.
Yes, sir.